call this meeting to order. The News Charter Board of Directors for our August meeting. The first item on the agenda for these gentlemen is to recognize a couple folks. So it's my pleasure to ask Chris Johnson and our man Jimmy to come up. Jimmy Lowell.
Hey, good to see you. Can you stay around for the meeting when I need you? So these are pretty much the same, and I won't get into a whole lot of talking about how much these two individuals have meant to me over the years and to us as the board of directors. But Chris is being recognized for 12 years of service as a founding member of the board of directors, and I think that's the last of the breed. So your tireless work, this sounds like your tireless work and effort is, if you look around, is one of the reasons that we are where we are here today. So thank you for your service. It's a little piece of paper for a whole lot of heart. I know. Here and there, okay. And then, Jimmy, 11 years serving on the board. I'll say one thing about Jimmy. Jimmy always kept us straight as to what the bylaws are. It's almost like our internal lawyer knew the bylaws, the charter, kept us straight on all of those things, and I miss him too a great deal. But your 11 years as a service to the board is being recognized here as well. A little color copy piece of paper there. But again, so much that these gentlemen have done for News Charter School, and I want to give them a really big hand. Anything other than Jim? That's right, good.
I'll say something. As one of the founding board members, it was indeed an honor and a privilege to be a part of something so great as News Charter School. In the position that I am in today, as well as when I was with the town of Smithfield, I was given the opportunity to serve on many organizations, chambers of commerce, regional economic development groups, statewide organizations that I participated in and leadership roles. But I can tell you that without a doubt, when I think about generational, I guess I need to turn on this. When I think about generational type things and what this means to this community of Smithfield and Selma and of Johnston County, I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we all did. It did not fall on the back of one person. It was definitely a community effort, and to think about where we came from over in Selma and the facilities there is just incredible. You could not have picked a worse location and for something that thrives so well, and it was due to the parents and to the board, but then also to the staff that made it all together. We did not make every decision correctly. I can tell you there were a ton of mistakes along the way, but the decisions that we made, and I'm confident that the decisions that the board members make today are doing it in the best interest in what they see. There was no blueprint, there was no roadmap of how to start a school or how to run a school, but we just had something internally that we felt like we needed to do, and we've been blessed with that. To think about buying this land from the church, to start looking for land because we were at well over capacity over in Selma, and to buy this, relocate in 9 months is just nothing short of miraculous and a miracle. And so anyway, it's just something that I'll always be proud of. Of all the things that I've ever done in my life, this is probably the most things that I'll always cherish. And that's not only because my children have gone here and have graduated here, but just the lives that hopefully that will be impacted for future generations. So thank you very much.
I do want to say I feel like we dragged this school into this community kicking and screaming sometimes. If it wasn't for the pioneering leadership and ideas and vision of people like Chris Johnson, we wouldn't be here right now. Nothing's more important to any parent than their kids, and the opportunity that I had as a parent at this school to influence the way things are today is nothing short of, I don't even have words to thank y'all for allowing me the opportunity. My kid is this year a senior. There are 6 or 8 of them left. 9 of them left from the first day that we opened the school here that have never been anyplace else but News Charter School. I'm proud of the way they all turned out. And I'm proud of the way the school has turned out.
Yeah, I'm getting ready. Yeah, I just maybe we needed to be up there. I wanted them to be able to go if they had something to go to. Because Chris is so well dressed, Maybe one of you.
So I wanted to do the reminder, the ethics statement for North Carolina State Government, conflict of interest reminder per North Carolina General Statute 138A-15E. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? So please state them for the record. That said, if during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain in participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. So that is our ethics statement. First up, item for your review, you have the agenda in front of you for tonight. You'll see pages 1 through 2. And do I have any comment or a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we reorder the standing committee reports for academic affairs to go first.
Are you making a motion to approve it with that change?
That's great.
Okay. Don't let me forget. And do I hear a second on that?
Second.
I've got a motion from Mr. Dunn, a second from Ms. Denning. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Next up, public comment. We have 4 people that have signed up. Chris, you're first on the list, so twice as nice.
Well, usually I'm sitting over there running my mouth, so I thought I'd get over here and see it from a different perspective. I realize I have 3 minutes and I won't take that much time, and I realize that y'all are not in a position nor the policy to answer anything, so I'm not looking for an answer. But I wanted to just address the board regarding an upcoming event on September 25th. Nationally is See at the Poll Day, and would like to make sure that whatever things that parents and students need to do to make sure that we stay in compliance with state law. The intent for anything that may be done is not to put anybody in a precarious situation, nor is it to put the school in any situation, but just make sure that you're aware of the event coming up, and make sure that if there's anything that we as supporters of News Charter School need to do in preparation for that to make sure that we stay in compliance, please let me know, and I'll be more to pass that along to other volunteers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Next up on the list, Derek Brown.
Good evening. My name's Eric Brownlee. I am a father of 4 children who have either attended this school or had 2 children in the first 2 graduating classes. So we're very proud of News Charter. Ever since Chris Johnson stood under a tree at my restaurant and talked me into sending my kids here. So, and I still have 2 middle school kids because my wife won't leave me alone. But we support this school and have supported the school in various ways over the years, mostly volunteer hours. And my wife has tirelessly been in the concession stand, taking gate. She goes on field trips and all that. I get to come up here and wrestle with the kids. I love it. So I get more out. I've always said I got more out of it than I gave. And I believe that to be the case. I was also the first Booster Club president 10 years ago, give or take. And we had a succession of people. Tim Brazel was after me, Stacy Moody after him, then Hillary with her sidekick Jerry, and Richard Lynch, and now Lena. I feel really good about Lena's leadership and the way she's taken on the task. She's had a busy summer, and I'm proud to be serving with her on that Booster Club board. I do want to also say you could not have had a better Booster Club president than Hillary Likes for all the many years that she served, and I'm just in awe of what she accomplished. We bought 2 basketballs the year I was president. That's about all we could afford. We were at that gym across the road there, but I want to thank those people and the leadership that they've provided over the years, and just tickled to death to be a part of all this. And also, I want to say because I've been here a long time, worked with a lot of different staffs. It's a great staff: Susan and Amanda, Brittany, and Dr. Schwartzlander. I'm in awe of what they do every day because I couldn't be around kids that much. But I appreciate what you do for our kids. And I want to thank the board because volunteering is supposed to be fun. It ain't always. And I know you're volunteers, and I know you're thoughtful and try to do the right thing when you can, and I do appreciate that. And lastly, I'd like to say I believe the school and the Booster Club can collaborate and do some great things this year and maximize their support from our community, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
Next up, Brett Heifel. Brett.
Hello, my name is Brent Heifel. I have 3 children here. We've been attending here for roughly 6 years. And so I'd like to say a few words. Good evening, friends of News Charter School. I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you tonight. Each of us gathered here now have a vested interest in the success of the staff and the children of our school. We wanted what is best for their future, and we can't do that without recognizing where every good and perfect gift comes from. So I would like to petition our Heavenly Father for a blessing upon this school. For those of you who would like to join me, may bow. If not, that is your decision. Lord, I humbly come to you to confidently petition you to bless and protect the board members, the administration, the staff, and the students of News Charter School. Lord, may you grant the board and the administration wisdom and discernment to make decisions that glorify you and, in turn, are for the good of our staff and our students. Lord, may you clothe our teachers and our staff in mercy and love, and give them the ability to inspire each other and the children to become the best version of themselves that they can be. Father, please instill respect and a desire to learn in our children. Heavenly Father, please place a hedge of protection around our school, one that not only keeps them physically safe, but creates a culture of Christian love, because we know perfect love drives out fear. Dear Lord, I praise you for each follower of Christ on the campus of News Charter and for the influence that they have. Lastly, Lord, I pray for the salvation of each person within the sound of my voice, for each student, each staff member that does not know Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord to come to the knowledge of their sin, to ask for forgiveness, and to trust on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Dear Lord, forgive me of my sins, lead, guide, and direct our efforts. In the name of your precious Son, Jesus. Amen. Thank you.
And then our last public
Comment tonight is Anthony Hopkins. Hopkins. I want to say sir. That's when I say that.
If he would share his bank account with me, that'd be great.
There you
Don't
go.
have a bank account.
My wife's going to pass out some information to you guys so that as I'm speaking, you might be able to follow along. My name's Anthony Hopkins. I too have 2 daughters here at this school, and one in the primary academy, one in the intermediate academy. Noose was an idea at one point in time that these gentlemen here helped to cultivate, and it's an idea that we don't want to let get away from us. I'm going to talk to you about 2 things. One's probably getting a little ahead of ourselves, but just sort of to get it out there. The 2 things I'm going to talk about, the end of grade test scores, and then also the grouping of students. I know all of the data for the end of grade test scores are not out there, but as you can see on your paperwork there's individual reports that go out to each parent, and on that individual report also lists the school, and it lists the district, and it lists the state as how the school is performing. Now when you look at our school, on the English end of grade test report card, we are barely at a 3. Barely at a 3. That's tragic. What that means is that by the state, that we are barely obtaining sufficient understanding of grade level content, of the grade level content, not above the grade level. That means that they probably will require support for the following year. It's like building a house. If you don't lay the proper foundation, you got to start over. Now, the other thing I want you to realize is a level 3 by the state means that they are not college or career ready. You have to be a level 4 or 5 to be college or career ready. That's what we're supposed to be shooting for. It's in our mantra, it's in our motto. We're trying to prepare great students for the future. Scary thing is, that's the good news. When you look at the math, you look at the individual report card, the district's not included on there, but our school is. Our score is a 546, a level 2. That means we did not even meet proficiency standards. What the state says that means is that there is inconsistent understanding of the grade level content. Now think about that. Inconsistent level of understanding of the grade level content. So if I'm in 3rd grade and you move me up to 4th grade and I don't even understand 3rd grade material, we have a problem. That means we're 2 levels away in mathematics from being college and career ready. Think about that. I'm asking the board to do something. I'm asking the board of directors to compile and release a list of the EOG reading and math breakdowns by grade level. It's public record. We don't want anybody's name included on it. We just want to see how many 5s were there in each grade level, how many 4s were there in each grade level, how many 3s were there in each grade level. Now, it used to be 2s and 1s, but from what I understand, they just call it not proficient. If you're not a level 3, you don't even get divided into a group. But how many are not proficient in each grade level? I also like to get the percentage of passage rate at each grade level, as well as a whole from 3 through 8. This is something that's important for the community to know. We are stakeholders in this school. We need to see what grades are failing these tests, what grades are not being held accountable, who's not teaching. We've got to figure this information out so that we can make decisions on what we need to do as parents within this community. It's something we deserve to know. It's something we have the right to know. This isn't a private institution. It's not a secret society. This is public knowledge, and it needs to be out there. I know we were 69 roughly on the reading. I think that was from the last board meeting. I don't know if that's an exact number yet or not. Looks like we're going to be lower than that in math. So I did a little calculation the best I could, and it looks like we're going to be somewhere in the low to mid 60s as our grade for News Charter. Now that's important. We, for several years in a row, maintained a 75 to 76. About 2 years back, we dropped to a 70, 5-point drop. Last EOG reporting, we bumped up to a 72. I don't know if that growth come from meeting the growth aspect or if we just had better scores. This time our scores are going to be lower, and that probably means we're also not going to have met growth. This should be something that concerns everyone. The parents, the faculty, the staff, the board, everyone should be concerned about this. Now you got to think about this. This is on a 15-point inflated scale. The state decided they were going to inflate the grading scale because they didn't want to have too many underperforming schools. That law is set to change. 2020 it reverts back to a 10-point scale unless they change the law. Who knows if they'll do that? They can't even pass a budget. So who knows if they'll change that law? If we stay in the 60s, that means we will be a D school. Now think about that. It went from a school of excellence to we could potentially be down to a D. When I go around in the community and I talk to other administrators, I talk to people from the local school board, you get various aspects of why you have low-performing schools. You hear things like you don't have a good socioeconomic environment, high poverty rate, lots of second language learners, demographic subgrouping. We don't have those issues at News Charter. So all that we have to look at is, are the students incapable of learning, or the teachers not teaching the subject matter? We got to figure out which one it is. Hopefully administrators can start walking through. I say I'm about to run out of time. The other thing I want to speak on is the board's policy to group students is accelerated and accelerated plus. The one grade that I know of is 5th grade. That is not really what has happened. They have identified an accelerated plus, got those groups of students and then divided them into 2 and heterogeneously mixed them with the other groups. And that's not what the policy states. You look in the handbook, that's not what's there. This board is mandated by law to operate this school, to operating procedures, budgeting, and curriculum. You're required to do it by law. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and you've had the opportunity to review the minutes of our July 23rd, 2019 meeting. Are there any comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve minutes.
Second? Second. So I have a motion to approve from Mr. Taylor and a second from Mr. Dunn. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. And the minutes are hereby approved. So we'd like to now have our Athletic Booster Club report, please.
Hi, I'm Lena. I'm the president of the Athletic Booster Club. I was asked to update the board on the progress for the upcoming year, or now the year, 2019-2020. Also, in the past, being on the board, I wasn't aware that we were able to give a progress update. So Eric and I have coordinated, and from this point on, one of the 2 of us will be here at each meeting to give you an update. Update. We didn't have, as many of you know, the best finish to 2018-19 because we had our president fell very ill. We struggled to raise the funds that were needed. So, and then the new school board was unable to meet till late July for the first time, which kind of set us back a little bit right now. So I feel that we're in a good spot. We're working hard to implement changes that will hopefully provide a successful year of growth in our membership and in our fundraising so that we can assist in providing those extra items for the athletics programs that are not in the school's budget for this year. One of the things I wanted to bring up was one of our board members was asked, why does the Athletic Booster Club exist? So I just took the first sentence from our bylaws. The News Charter School Athletic Booster Club is a nonprofit organization formed for the purpose of assisting in and enhancing the athletic programs sponsored by the News Charter School. So in a very simple sentence, that's what we're here for. We're here to help enhance the athletic program for the school. With that in mind, this year's board is interested in working with the school as a team and each having input as to how this team will function. One of the changes that we have made to work with a request from the school is to change our wording of our membership or sponsorship levels. At our meeting last week, we voted to call all of our sponsorship levels membership levels, so that hopefully this will help alleviate any confusion on donors of the school and the Booster Club. We voted to continue using the current titles of our membership levels, for example, bronze, gold, and such, because they are familiar to our donors from years past. We would love to work with the school to determine the best combined use of I just called it the donor acknowledgement wall, the recognition wall, whatever we decide on, in the gym. We feel that there's plenty of room for both sets of donors to be recognized in the gym, as this area has the most visual traffic for all school and athletic events. One proposed change that will enable this joint use of the gym is that the Athletic Booster Club would purchase an American flag to be hung elsewhere in the gym to free up more wall space where the painted one is. We are excited, updates as to where we're going with the year. We're excited to work with the Resource Committee on a fall festival. Eric is working on some cow patty bingo. We're working with Lori Woodard, who's also our fundraising chair. She's on the Resource Committee, so we're working to make that a successful event. We will also be hosting again this year the Booster Bazaar in December. It is a chance to work with the community to allow them to showcase their talents while giving the students a chance to shop for family members for the holidays. And then our other fundraising events are that we're raising funds through the sale of the Golden Corral cards, concession sales during home games, and then through our Athletic Booster Club memberships. We are working on getting all of this information updated so that we can update our booster page on the school's website so everyone has the most updated information at all times, including minutes. And then in closing, the new Booster Club board is excited for this new year and the goals that we have set to be able to work with the athletic director and her wish list to hopefully enhance the experience for the student athletes. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Student Government Association as Student Government Association say they have no report, no elections yet. Okay, we will go past that. That takes us to your report.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to provide you an update on what's happening here at News Charter School. First, just as a reminder, our purpose for being here is to provide excellence in developing college-ready graduates, and the 3 areas of focus for us over the next several years will be excellence in academics, excellence in culture, and excellence in operations. I read it to you. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our staff and volunteers for their efforts throughout the summer and leading into August to make this one of the best starts to the school year we have had in many years. We're receiving lots of feedback from parents and students and families and staff members in particular, that they've just felt like it was a really positive start to the year and that we've got a lot of good momentum to get to all of our goals that we've stated for the year and for the coming years. Operationally, our enrollment update for you, we originally targeted an enrollment of 945. We have 944 on the books as of yesterday, with our ADM calculating in around 940. This is the time of the year when I remind everybody what that calculation means. As far as the state is concerned, we have to document how many students are physically enrolled and attending school across the first 20 days of school. If a student shows up on the very first day of school, they count as much as they possibly can. If they don't come until the second day of school, then they're sort of worth 19/20ths of a student. If for some reason we don't find out until, let's say, the third day of school that a family isn't attending and we call someone off the wait list and they get here, let's say, on day 5, then they might be worth 16/20ths of a student. And if we can backfill an opening, if someone started the year with us and then transitioned somewhere else and we can get someone from the wait list back into that empty seat, then we can maybe recoup some of that 20th of that student. So we are looking at about 940 students showing up on our ADM as of the first 8 days of school. That's pretty good number for us to have because generally speaking it goes up from there a little bit as we get more students in off of the wait list for any vacancies that we are aware of. We do have an active wait list, and wait list processing is happening on a daily basis. So if you have anybody that is waiting to know whether or not their number will be called, just tell them to check their email and check their phone messages because we are calling as the moment we find out that we have an opening. We'll be doing that very actively over the next 2 weeks as we come up to that 20th day, and then we'll take a breath, take a lay of the land and see where we are and continue monitoring our wait list until we get to the point in February where we start taking new applications for the next school year. So that's a reminder for everyone that the moment we have an open seat, we don't wait. We do go ahead and reach out to families throughout the school year. So families that are on the wait list, there is always a possibility you could get a call in October or November or December or even January for an open seat. If you haven't gotten the call by late January, then you're probably not going to get a call for the current school year, and you'll want to consider reapplying for the next.
Where are we at on the wait list? It's like
It's moving so fast that it's really hard for me to give you an accurate number right here, but I can send one out to the board following because I think, yes, it's still over 300. Okay. Right at 300 total. But there are variations. For example, for whatever reason, we have an exceptionally large 10th grade wait list, which is new for us. Normally it's 9th grade. We have always in kindergarten an exceptionally large wait list. You might have a smaller, we'll always have smaller ones, let's say 11th and 12th, if any at all. Some families start to figure out that if we don't get in kindergarten or 5th or 6th grade, it's kind of not worth applying, especially if I have a singleton. So we do see that grades like 2nd and 3rd and 4th sometimes don't have as many on the wait list. But that's just behavior.
Yeah, so can we just, I'd like to make an official request that administration put together a little bit of historical data around lottery per grade level, as well as attrition rates. We've talked about this for a number of years, and I still don't know that we've got a handle on it. For example, it's my understanding we had a family that was not even in the lottery that had got a call last week to come, so
remember that as soon as the lottery is over, any family that's still interested in coming to the school can apply and be put on the wait list at the bottom of the wait list in an order in which their application is received. And we do encourage families that move into the area late. We have a lot of families that'll move in March, April, May, and the lottery's already been completed. So it is possible for someone in the lower ends of the wait list to have not gone through the lottery, but to have applied through that late application process.
I just want to see the data that shows the lottery because on one grade we may have a really high count, and then if 90% of the other grades were already offering people position that weren't even in the lottery, then clearly either you got a really high attrition or the demand for those grades was not as high as it seemed.
Yep.
So I want the data to tell the real picture of really what's going on from a demand for the product perspective. Do you have a follow-up?
That was actually my follow-up question, just to kind of how far down the wait list now are we calling people? So how many people have we already gone through? So have we had like 3 spots and then gone through 20 people on the wait list, that type of thing?
It's my understanding there's no one on the 9th grade wait list, right? My understanding is that the 9th grade wait list has been zero.
So the 9th grade wait list has been exhausted, yes.
Further question? Anything further?
The only other thing to talk about at that point is at this point now the traditional schools have started. We will sometimes go through the wait list where they decline the seat because they've become comfortable with wherever it is that they're attending. So know that sometimes the reason we might go through a wait list isn't so much that people weren't actively there or that we moved that many students. To your point about attrition, it may not be that we've moved that many students. It may be that they've chosen to stay where they are or remove themselves from the wait list. So there's lots of reasons why that may happen, but it may not be as much of a movement of bodies of existing students.
Is that data that Mr. Dunn asked for, is that readily available to provide at the next meeting? Or
Yes.
Okay. So we'll...
As far as the staffing update, as you recall, we have 92 current full-time positions based on the approved budget. We have 4 remaining vacancies, 2 of which we have recommendations for closed session. For the 2 remaining vacancies, we're continuing our recruitment, screening, and interviewing processes to ensure that we find high-quality candidates to fill those spots. General operations update, as I mentioned, the opening of school went very well. I always have to at this time of year say thank you parents for adhering to our updated carpool patterns in the morning, and particularly as we continue to try to be good community members and get cars off of Booker Dairy and Kelly Drive as much as possible. Know that the snaking pattern is related a little bit to the signaling patterns. It's just what we're gonna have to deal with until the road construction is finished. I'm hearing from some trusted sources that it may be into spring before it's complete. But do know that DOT's version of complete, we would think it's complete probably a good 2-3 months before they think it's complete. It's kind of like turning the keys over in a mortgage situation. So there is a possibility that all of the lanes will be open to traffic as early as January, February, but just continue to be on the lookout for that. In addition, the extension that goes from the end of our stop sign here at Kelly Drive off to Buffalo Road is projected to open in the next couple of months. So families coming in from that portion of Clayton or wanting to exit to that portion of Clayton will be able to avoid the traffic signal altogether and be able to just turn right here at the assisted living location, go all the way up to Buffalo Road, turn right on Buffalo Road and be right there at the 70 interchange. So that'll be another relief valve for some families that don't need to use the light at Kelly Drive. As far as our main entrance goes, I've had lots of questions about whether or not we're volunteering to keep it closed. The short answer is yes. We could work with the construction company and demand that they move those items, but for right now, for the safety of all of our students and drivers, we're asking that this continue to be a one-way traffic flow during carpool until all roadway improvements are complete. So we will wait to reopen that front entrance until all roadway entrances are complete, or the roadway projects are complete.
Do you know people will be able to enter the school from Buffalo Road?
From Buffalo Road, they'll be able to turn left, come to Kelly Drive here at the stop sign, and we'll have to change our traffic signaling to make sure that we can get flow going there.
Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to work.
We'll have to have a person sort of permanently located there because there won't be a light to be able to make sure that we keep traffic moving or follow the stop sign rules.
You're talking about down here.
Right here, just past the
And this
assisted living
becomes a
location.
right in, right out.
This will become a right in, right out, actually left in, because there will be a curb cut for that, but you can't make a left out. So what we'll do is we'll close it during carpool, but leave it open during normal operating hours and after school for people who are coming for after school events. The new organization of our hot lunch program is going extremely well. A special thank you to the Booster Club for providing hot lunches for our students for so many years, but we took that burden off of their shoulders this year and have a partnership with Golden Corral to be able to provide that for our students. We were able to get the price point down a little bit and get them to agree to bring the servers here, so it didn't require any volunteers to distribute the lunches. So far, we're able to get our senior academy students through the line in about 6 minutes, and that's the most cumbersome line. So we're finding it to be very, very successful. If you'll notice your lovely hot lunch line reminders on the sidewall to remind the students, stay over there to get your food. One of the major improvements that we did was to have 2 separate distribution locations. We were hearing a lot of feedback from students and families that our older students just did not have enough time to travel to the gym, to get it out of concessions, and travel back and eat the food. And so that was deterring them from getting a nutritious hot lunch meal. So we were seeing a huge uptick in sales in our 5 through 12 population, which is it is a fundraiser for the school, but more importantly, it does provide a nutritious hot lunch option for our students who need that. A special thank you to Eric Brownlee for being our community volunteer to help us act as a liaison in that exchange, and to Dana and her staff over at Golden Corral for everything that they've done to make this possible for us this year. Budget update. As Mr. Hopkins mentioned, the budget has not been approved by the state legislature nor the governor's office. So what is happening for us is we're still in that limbo stage where the state is authorizing us a certain amount of drawdown monies. It's the same thing they're doing for all schools across the state. So we are able to access cash from the state to pay bills that are eligible to be paid through those funds, but our official allotments, which is a term that we're more familiar with, have not been released or put into the budget system. All that means for us is we're going to be extremely watchful about our expenditures during this time period. We certainly have cash flow to cover anything that we need to while we're waiting for more distributions to come. We'll be fine for the entire school year if needed, but it just makes things a whole lot easier from an accounting and expenditure reporting perspective when the allotments are actually released, and we can give you final numbers on what the head count value will be for each student for general ADM as well as for EC ADM. Because right now we're operating off of last year's funding level is what we're operating off of, even though my budget is for a little bit higher percentage because we expected some increases in allotments from the state. I'm trying to see what else. But we do feel comfortable that we'll be able to meet all of our budget requirements regardless of what comes through the state legislature. Scores from last year's administration of the math EOGs and EOCs, as was mentioned during some of our public comments, the individual student reports for math have been released and sent out to families, and that's probably a copy of what you saw in the handouts today. For the 3rd through 8th grade EOGs, they're coming home with the students, Dr. Schwartzlander and Ms. Pandora. They're coming home with the students, so check backpacks if you haven't seen them. And the school reports have not been released. So the summative data that looks at the school across the board, where we can see how many 3s and 4s and 5s, it's still individual student reports, which I'll be honest, with 940 students, it's just too cumbersome for us to manually calculate all of that. So we are waiting for those summary reports to come in. We've heard that they're being created now over the next couple of days, but there's one person for all charter schools running all of those reports at the state level. So it's going to take a couple of days for them to release them to us. But the moment that we have them, we'll be coordinating with our academic committee to start analyzing those numbers and figuring out what they mean for last year's performance, what they mean for future performance, and what they mean for any adjustments we might need to make immediately to our plans for instruction. As a general reminder, all of the math scores were renormed and they were given brand new tests, and a brand new Math 3 exam was introduced last year. So as a state, we generally anticipate the entire state to take a hit in score performance overall because of the new tests and the new requirements and the new standards. We saw that back in the 2013-14 school year, I think it was, or maybe 12-13, when they renormed all of the language arts tests. So it's not unexpected that the state as a whole won't be doing as well as they have been for the years leading up to this year, but that's no excuse for us. It's just a general reminder.
We have always been ahead of the average for the state.
Right, and I can't speak to what was presented because they are individual student reports for a particular grade, so it's not indicative of what's happening across the whole school. So again, we just need more information before I can give you an educated response as to how well we did or did not do last year. As far as strategic planning updates goes, as you can imagine, starting school slows lots of other processes down. So it has been on hold as we've brought in new board members, as we're bringing in new staff members, but we are continuing our selection process for the senior academy leader, and we are continuing our process for the selection of the dean of students position to critical leadership positions for advancing the strategic plan. But I do want to share with you some actual work towards strategic initiatives and strategic action items that are in place. PDEA training for over 75% of our teaching faculty has been completed, and the strategies for that instructional model are already being put into place in classrooms. In fact, we even had someone who is outside of the school community recognize that students have taken those skills to a robotics team that's not affiliated with the school, and it was in the JOCO report recently. I'd encourage you to read that. Writing rubrics have been refined and are ready for use across all disciplines. So the writing rubrics that were developed last year as part of the Plus Leadership Initiative are in place in all teachers' hands, so that writing is being evaluated consistently across all curricula. It's not just in the language arts department, but also in other departments. So the writing prompt for all students that's based on the summer reading assignments will be given to all students by the end of this week, I believe.
Correct.
Yes, all students across the K-12 at some point in time will have had their opportunity to give us a writing sample by the end of this week. Once all of that data is in place, we'll gather all the teachers on one of our first teacher work days on September 20th to do a calibrated evaluation of all those writing samples and give ourselves a baseline indicator of what areas for improvement we need to be working on with our students in the area of writing.
What's the rubric that you were talking about? Is that the one that was emailed out this summer, or?
Okay.
Correct. Okay.
Yes, the one that was shared in the email to the families is the one that will be used. Curriculum maps for all intermediate and senior courses have been submitted and are undergoing a feedback process loop at this time, so that we should feel comfortable by the end of the school year at the very latest, but probably even earlier than that, is to being able to post some of that information in our academic portion of our website for all to see.
The curriculum maps have been
Submitted to their academy leaders for review. Our K-2 teachers are already implementing competency-based assessment strategies throughout all disciplines to better reflect student progress toward proficiency and mastery of targeted learning skills versus focusing on average performance across multiple areas. Our recruitment processes are already being enhanced based on some feedback from families and stakeholders about extending our reach into a wider area to be able to target high-quality applicants in different and differentiated talent pools. It's actually garnered us a strong applicant for our senior academy leader position, and we're continuing to leverage those opportunities to expand our reach outside of the normal online teacher profile type. While most teachers go there, I'll be candid, and we'll redirect them there to submit their application materials. We're leveraging things like LinkedIn and Indeed to get our reach out there to people who are considering charter environments. And what we've learned most is that if we're trying to recruit someone who's already employed, I need to see them where they are in their professional spaces so that they might see us and get their curiosity piqued and think about transitioning to us versus someone who's looking for a position. And then there's so much more that's going on, but we will have a comprehensive report and update at the September Board of Directors meeting. Our school improvement team meets on September 5th to do some refinements on their portions of implementing the strategic plan. And then, of course, as we meet with our committees, we will give incremental progress throughout the month. That concludes the general portion of my report. I did want to defer some of my time to Mr. Squibb, our EC director, tonight to be able to give you an update on his audit and review of our EC program. Unfortunately, a family member has been struck with a pretty serious situation, and so he's at the hospital with his family right now. But I do have his report in front of you. What I thought I would do is walk you through what it is that he and I have sort of discovered and what he's been working on and implementing with the proposal or with the handout that's in front of you, and then maybe take any questions that you have and then bring him back in September to answer any of those detailed questions that we can legally respond to. Please do keep in mind we can't answer anything that's student specific or anything that might violate FERPA, as a general reminder. So the basic first couple of slides there are just what's the audit review. Really, after just a couple of months on staff last year, he realized that we were very limited in our submissions of applications for available grant funds from the state. We were not leveraging that ability to get more resources for our students through state special needs funds, and so that's one. The other was that we had an inconsistent IEP development process. We noticed that in the K-4 population, it sort of followed one pattern. In the 5-8, 9-12, it was a little bit different. We weren't leveraging the fact that we're a K-12 campus to create a really nice, consistent process. K-12, nothing necessarily wrong with the process, but we were just tripping over ourselves as we had to redo it as the students promoted into another grade configuration. And the third was an inefficient student identification process. For people who are familiar with the term child find, it's a both state and federal law that says that we need to actively make sure our parents know how to access special education curriculum, or more importantly, how to say, hey, I think my student might need some support. What we were finding is, well, and I'll talk about the solutions on the next couple of slides. So when we talk about the limited submissions of applications for available grant funds, immediately he began applying for funds, and we were able to get $37,500 in additional funds for EC students based on that work last year. Some of that is specific to student need. I will remind you that when we're requesting special education funds from the state, they may be targeting a particular need of a student that we couldn't have anticipated because they're new to our school. So by way of example, $25,000 of that we would not be eligible for again this year because the student that made us eligible for that is a continuing student. But that's not to say that there aren't other areas where new students or changes in IEP configurations would make the students eligible. So he's continuing to leverage the success of his work last year to find more funds for us for this year. Those don't offset other expenses, but they allow us to provide a more enhanced educational experience for those students. Inconsistent IEP development process. The first area was clearly written student goals that include specific measures of student progress. What that looks like from level to level will be different. When we're talking about letter sounds versus complete sentences, that sort of thing, they're going to change, but they need to be written in such a way that regardless of who's on staff, anybody can implement and track those goals. We were finding that people were writing them in a way that I understood it because I'm going to be managing it, and then if for some reason I took a different position or maybe was assigned to a different class assignment and the next person picked up that document, they might not have that personal knowledge of how that goal was crafted. So we're working with them to be more objective in how they write the goals so that any person who's implementing the IEP can clearly understand what's trying to be accomplished and how to measure them. The clearly written accommodations and modifications for teacher implementation, the same thing. By way of example, there's a very common accommodation that we would write for many students who might need it called Mark in Book. And that came from the days when we actually administered tests with a blue test book, and it would allow the student to write all of their answers in the book and not have to transfer them to the bubble sheet. Nowadays, I don't think a student ever gets a book. They get a packet. They might have an online. So it's not just us. It's across the board. We've consulted with an attorney who specializes in this, and he said it's nothing unique to our campus, but he's challenging us to be really crystal clear so that when a classroom teacher picks that up, they understand what that modification means. And if it means the student doesn't have to use a bubble sheet, or the student is allowed to write on your test, or, let's be really clear what those accommodations are. So those are some small changes where we can create some drop downs of some really clear instructions so that the teachers that are implementing the IEPs won't have to ask as many questions about how to do that for that student. Another area would be inclusion of more precise present level of performance indicators. If none of you have been through an IEP process, one of the first things that you do is you take an evaluation of how well the student is performing today towards that goal. Then you figure out what you need to do to improve that performance. And sometimes the present level of performance was too verbal, or meaning that it was too much of a story, which is helpful for parents. Parents can understand the story of how their student is performing, but we need to get those measures in there as well so that we know how to help the student grow in that area. So it's just combining those two. And then the comparable and consistent data sets for progress monitoring. This will most likely be where we come to you for a fund request or a budget adjustment. Many of our tools for tracking student progress are kind of all over the map, and we don't really have a single tool that we can use across the board for where students can maybe do a quick assessment and we can gather some important data. So we are working on having consistent and comparable data progress monitoring with the tools that we have today, but we are probably going to be coming forward at some point with some recommendations for a more comprehensive tool that can be used across multiple grade levels. The other area for the development of the IEP process was that once we figured out all the things we needed to fix, we had to train everybody on how to do that. So we have had some specialized training for all of our EC staff in IEP goal writing and autism support. It's just a specific area that requires very specific specialized instruction. We want to make sure our teachers are fully equipped with how best to do that. Clarity in the writing accommodations and modifications, and then different methods of data collection, including how to use the data to determine the appropriate accommodations and modifications. I hate reading to you from what's here, but I just want to sort of clarify that's training that's already occurred, and then there'll be intermittent refreshers on that training throughout the school year to make sure that all of those things that have been trained on are being done. In fact, the other thing that will be happening is general training for all teachers. There's a misconception out there for some that a special education teacher is the only one that's responsible for the instruction of a special education student. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The reality is all students are general education students first, and then they get their specialized instruction second. And so it's really important for all of our general education teachers to very much understand what that student with an IEP needs in their general classroom, in addition to how they might get additional supports from their special education teacher. Some other things that we're working on are de-escalation techniques. A lot of that is specific to autism, but it also is to other behavior elements that students might face related to their disability. And we want to make sure that we don't have any teachers doing anything they're not trained to do, but we want to train them in a couple of the de-escalation techniques so they can see when their students might need a rest break or a calming break or a walk break or whatever else it might be. What's missing from that piece that you're not seeing here is that the audit process that Mr. Squibb is conducting now. Every month he will be doing a spot audit on a various number of IEP files that no teacher's going to know which one's going to be audited, and when he goes through that audit, he'll go through it with the individual case manager who's responsible for that file and make sure that everything that we've trained them on is being incorporated into those files, and if it's not, then we'll make the adjustments that are needed right there in that very moment and then continue forward. As far as the insufficient student, yes.
Is that something new? Every month?
Yes. So that based on the audit that he had, he realized that we can train people. It goes back to what we've all been talking about over the last several years, is how do we hold our teachers accountable? I can send you to training. I can verify that you went to training. I can see your initial work sample that you did during the training session. But if I don't go back and look at your regular work throughout the school year, how do I know that you're actually implementing it with fidelity and accurately? Or that you understood the training fully when you went through it. And so that audit is going to serve not only as an accountability piece, but it's also going to serve as ongoing training. Because we can say, ooh, okay, all of you are doing this the same way. That must mean that the trainer was ineffective in explaining how we're supposed to be implementing this. Or, ooh, we found something new that no one had thought of during the training to ask a question about. Let's go reach out to our trainer and see what we can do. As far as the inefficient student identification process goes, as you can imagine, being a K-12 campus, when a family or a student was identified as potentially needing services from an IEP or through the Exceptional Children's Department, who do you go to? Who do you report that to? And our inefficient process was that, well, you could give it to your academy leader, or you could give it to the EC director, or you could give it to the EC case manager. In our effort to be helpful to families, we actually created an inefficient system because they could sometimes get lost or slowed down because they didn't get to the EC director fast enough so that the EC director could immediately build a team, get the data together to evaluate for the student, and then move forward with that process. So by having we had an 82% efficiency rate in 17-18, and by streamlining that process and having them all go through the EC director, we had a 100% efficiency rate last year. So we expect that that change and that improvement will continue to make that process even better for us. As always, that's not the end. There's always more. And one area, as I mentioned, the general education teacher is the core teacher for every student. So co-teaching and co-planning with their EC teacher is going to be an area of emphasis for us. For some of our teachers, this is brand new. They've never had the opportunity to do this with their EC teacher. For other teachers, it's just change, right? Just change in and of itself is kind of different. So we've started with some incremental training that we did at the beginning of the school year before classes started, and we'll be doing ongoing training throughout the school year with our teachers and our EC staff as well on how best to do this. There are lots of new models coming out that really make it easier for both teachers to participate in the process and to serve the needs of all students in the classroom. And we want to make sure that what's best for students is happening everywhere. So we will be training staff on the proper implementation of those strategies, monitoring and retraining during the implementation phases. We'll of course be reviewing lesson plans and conducting some spot checks and teacher walkthroughs as they're implementing their co-teaching and co-planning efforts. And then of course, we're always going to have continued training and development for our EC staff in the IEP development process. One of the things that came out of a separate review last year was the need for the training for all staff on accommodations. We had an attorney come out and give that training to us in August. It was amazing. Our teachers were very, very thankful, all teachers, to have that opportunity to better understand each individual role in the process and how better to advocate for students. So we're in a really, really great place. And the other thing that will be coming forward, I was talking with Mr. Squibb just today, although we use DPI's resources for the most part to help us in educating our parents about what EC services are, he's really starting to feel that we need our own personalized News Charter School Exceptional Children's Manual that can really make it more about how you receive your services on our campus. So he'll be developing that manual for the school year. Hopefully we'll have that in place before we get to lottery. That way any new family that comes in for the 2020-2021 school year will have access to our personal materials in addition to those state level materials. So if you have questions for Mr. Squibb, I'll write them down.
Who's going to do the teacher walkthroughs for the EC?
So the teacher walkthroughs will be a combination of Mr. Squibb and the academy leaders as they all get trained up on knowing which teachers are participating in the process. And these will be separate from their evaluation because this is supposed to be a coaching model. This is not a gotcha process. So this would be a process of saying, hey, you're telling me you've done a co-planning and you're going to do co-teaching. We're going to walk through and see how you're implementing it and go, ooh, you're not really following the model when you do this. Or I like the way you adjusted the model for your student population in this way. And so it'll just be a way to help them improve that process so that we can get some master co-teachers on campus that can then continue the training in-house for us.
How many EC students do we have?
We're right around the 100 mark, I think. We were just under 100 with our April head count, but we had some students transfer in over the summer, and as well as new students being identified daily. So we should probably float around 100, which puts us just over the 10% mark.
Do you know how many will be spot checked each month? Did he say how many?
No, I'll get that for you.
Yeah, I was just curious.
He did have a count, but I've forgotten it.
Yeah, with the number.
Yep.
I guess I want to make sure we have.
It's statistically relevant.
Yeah, that we have a good oversight.
Yep.
And if have 100 and we're only doing 3 a month, so I just want to make sure we have good oversight in this.
So first, thanks for the report. I think it's thorough. I think it shows some clear areas of improvement. One thing I'd like to suggest, and I think, as I reflect back on a number of years ago, we used to have like an audit committee for the board. And I seem to remember that some of those discussions at the time were around verifying certain procedural things were happening, almost like as announced entity consultant. We renamed that committee as the Academic Affairs Committee. I'd just like to make a point that from an accountability and a results perspective, that we own the responsibility to make sure what's presented to us actually gets done. So I'd like to just make a note on this particular topic that there's things that we could and should do. There's no timelines. There's no, specific deliverables. That really is where accountability happens, right? That we can come back in 3 months and say, we said we're going to do items 4, 5, and 6. did 4, 5, and 6 get done? So I'm assuming in our current committee structure, that would fall under the Academic Affairs Committee to actually work on the next level of detail of what the real execution plan for these things that are being recommended about school be implemented, so that we can come back. I don't know, good timeline, I'll defer to the Academic Affairs Committee to come back to us, but I'd like at a minimum to see some report at the middle of the year that said, we had 15 things we said we were going to do. What 10 did we get done? Are we done? Did we exceed it? Are we way behind the ball, so that we follow through and show our stakeholders that when we say we're going to do something, we get it done?
Well, that's a good point. If we've done something in the past to set the precedent through the audit committee, and that continues through the academic committee, there should be some follow-up on that.
We must have ESP because we already added Mr. Squibb to the Academic Affairs Committee. He was there with us the first time that we met for the school years, understanding that it'll be critical that information from his area gets reported out through that.
I just think what I'm trying to say to us as a board as we kind of mature a little bit is we need to understand what are the things that as a board we go back and validate that the institution says it's doing and it's actually doing. I mean, we can sit here and listen on it going, but what is that validation process for us from a governance perspective? I just use this one as a way for us to start to think about that one. But we can use this as a test run specifically.
And I think it's important to try to figure out what that way is to make sure there's a continued involvement, because, as I said, we're the ones that wind up getting called in front of DPI should something not be work well. So we don't want to get to confidence, but at the same time, we want to verify some of that, do our role. Anything else?
Well, since you mentioned DPI, as part of our federal grant application process through NCDPI, we do need to make sure that we affirm with our board each year our plans for use of our Title I funds. As a reminder, Title I funds come to us based on family and student responses to a survey regarding, we actually use the survey regarding internet access, but it also tells us a little bit about family household income. Based on the numbers that we report there, we become eligible for certain funds. Those funds then can be used for any student that qualifies for the targeted intervention that we've set forth. Over the last several years, we've focused on using those funds to support reading and math gaps or reading and math interventions. So it doesn't matter who you are as a student. If you meet the eligibility requirements based on a gap that you may have in your learning, then you're eligible for the support services. And so we want to continue using our Title I funds to support reading and math enrichment for our students, such that we hire a intervention success coach, continue to use that for that position that we filled last year. That person provides K-8 support for our tutoring schedule, as well as for our instructional strategies that we use with the students in those small group settings, and then provides direct instruction in our 5-8 space for students who might be eligible in that area. In addition, we use leveled literacy intervention resources. And that way what we have right now is a full kit for the whole school to use. What we'd like to do is expand that to where we can get kits directly located in in individual classrooms, so that throughout the year teachers can also do some small group work with their students in the classroom. So we want to expand our access to those kits. They're just research-based, shows that the more access that the teachers have to those kits, the more they can do some targeted interventions with students based on specific reading skills. The other thing would be to use some of our Title I funds to hire part-time tutors. That gives us much more coverage. If I have part-time tutors, I can have 2 or 3 of them operating at the same exact moment, providing intervention services for more students at one time. If I hire a full-time position, what they can do in a regular schedule is all they can serve. And we actually end up disservicing our students by not being able to put more feet on the ground per se. And then the last would be to purchase other materials and supplies needed to provide intervention services in reading and math. We've identified a couple of resources. Ms. Sandora, what was the new math intervention kit? It wasn't Go Math.
No, not Go Math. We're looking at, it's through Houghton Mifflin. I believe it's Do the Math is what it is. I know that Ms. Fly has been doing some of the research. It was actually an intervention that I touched base with my former curriculum director and administrative mentor in New Jersey, that my previous district used as a intervention for our students who are in that Tier 2 level of MTSS and need the support. So we'll be looking through that and vetting that resource to determine if it's a best step for us.
As a reminder, we were using brick math for the last year or so, and we're finding that it's useful in the classroom, but it's not as useful as an intervention service. It doesn't seem to plug the gaps for the students, and so we're looking for a better tool.
So, just so I'm clear,
Is that an ask? I mean,
So I'm just asking for at this meeting, for the board to affirm our plan to use funds in these ways for Title I, which will be continuing to use them in similar patterns to.
So, just so I'm clear then, whatever Title I money we receive, my expectation is we spend every single lasting penny of it.
Yes.
Right, to help these students. The general category of what is it's kind of hard for me to say, would I pick 1, 2, or 3?
No, it would be all of them.
Oh, so, okay, so you're saying all of them?
We have enough funds to support all 4 of those areas.
I'm just thinking from a procedural perspective, that money is allocated within the budget for specific items. Is there anything contractually we have to prove for these particular ones?
Oh, no.
So we don't need to vote to approve it because that's under your purview because it's in the.
I just have to show on the record that the board has been presented with the plan and that they're supportive of the plan, so that when I go to show minutes, that you are aware of this is how we set our budget. This is basically how we set our budget.
Yeah, these are the administrative things we got to do. I guess
Yeah.
the question I would have is, do we need a motion to accept the money?
No, a motion to support the plan.
The motion to support the plan.
Plan for expenditures.
As presented,
Right.
but the finance committee hasn't, but that's.
It's already been built into the projected budget because we expected the budget.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
It's money in, money out. It's
Yes.
money that you get grant money for a particular purpose. So it's really, you either use it for that or you can't use it for anything.
Make the motion.
I make the motion to approve it as presented.
Got a motion from Mr. Dunn, a second. From Mr. Woodard. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
I just made one point, is in the us approving that plan, my new word, I guess, is gonna be accountability, it's unclear to me, like you're making investments in money, is what is the accountability model to know that the things we pick actually have an impact? I'm all for supporting the money and more, but I want us to hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability that if we say we did items ABC, how do we know that next year, if we're back at this table having the same discussion, did ABC work or ABC didn't? And we need
Understood.
we need to build some accountability into what we do.
Okay.
Done.
Motion on the floor, all in favor. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay,
And that concludes my report, subject to any questions from the board.
we covered that well, so, thank you. Going to executive committee report. I've lost track of weeks. Did we have a call? We didn't have a call. That's why
We didn't have one.
Okay. It goes fast. So we have nothing from the executive committee this month. And so we'll go to the standing committee reports and academic affairs. Dr. Schwarzlander is recognized.
You got the mic.
Well, thank you. Academic Affairs met for the first time in the 1920 school year last week. And as we were compiling information over the summer and at the beginning of the school year, we thought the best tact to take during the first meeting would be to compile a list of what we have all been hearing, what we want to bring to the table, and areas to focus on. So that was one of the initial steps that we took, and I can just tell you generally what has made the list. Talking about maximizing and leveraging our partnerships with community colleges and universities. And Mrs. McGinnis and I have been making moves to reach out to community colleges within an hour of our campus to allow students access to those campuses to take online classes. We chose within an hour of Noose because at some point you do have to drive to the campus, meet with a registrar, so we want to make sure that we're not saying you could take classes at any community college in the state because you might not want to drive 4 hours to go to Asheville to AB Tech. We have also talked about updating our course catalog for the Senior Academy. Ms. Pulliam is going to speak on her school targets, concerns about the Senior Academy English Department, how we audit courses in the Senior Academy, our school calendar, rigor and grouping, ACT prep, which I've had a phone call with Princeton Review this afternoon that I'll share with Academic Affairs, how we can maximize the information we get for students who transfer into our schools, who come to us with major learning gaps, and how we address those learning gaps and get those kids college and career ready, redefining and revisiting PLUS, college advising, soup to nuts, everything that parents need to know. And I will say that an email has gone out this afternoon that helps families understand what early action, early decision, that sort of stuff means for college students. Our PSATs, SAT scores, how we can increase and improve those as well. So those are just a few of the items that made our compiled list. And obviously, you know, we're welcome and open to feedback for other items to be put on the list as well. And we also talked about Mrs. Pulliam's school targets, so.
Got the one whose button didn't want to say click. Everyone gets a turn sometime. So as part of our last board meeting and our continuing conversations in academic committee, the discussion was, what are the targets for this year? So while they're not super fancy and pretty just yet, because I need to get them approved, the goal is then, once approved, to start setting ourselves up with some red, yellow, green type dashboarding systems where we can compare ourselves to other institutions that are like us, not only in the region, but in makeup. In addition, we want to be able to compare ourselves to our own targets, back to the accountability conversation we've been having throughout tonight's meeting. So I do want everyone to recognize that these are targets for the 1920 school year. We certainly have loftier visionary targets for our school over time, but we have to take account of the fact that we are where we are, and we need to grow from where we are, and you can't do all of that in 1 year sometimes to get to your ideal state. So what you'll see here, much to the conversation we've been having all throughout tonight's meeting, is that certain data elements have just not been reported, and they're not available for us to review, but that shouldn't slow us down. We had a target for ourselves set at a 75 as our school report card grade with meeting or exceeding growth. Whether or not we hit that target is still up for debate when we get those final numbers from the state based on the growth and proficiency data. But regardless, whatever it is that we hit, we need to grow by at least 2% this year so that we can continue moving forward. And so we want to be a B or a higher as our overall grade. We want to see a 2% increase in our overall score from whatever is reported for 18-19, and we want to continue meeting or exceeding growth. As a general reminder, our trend had been not meets. So we're trying to get to the point where we're exceeding growth. So that would be the recommendation for the school report card grade. Recognizing that there's other sub-elements that make up the school report card grade, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we don't want to become average either. So we want to hold ourselves accountable for a 75% proficient rating or better across all required state assessments. With a 74% or better, I've actually increased that from when we talked in academic affairs based on new data, but a 74% proficient or better on each of the individual components. And so the reason I say that is in some areas we tend to do better, then that's great. But we want to make sure that we're not allowing a 69 and an 80 to become our 75. We want to be pushing the needle on each of the individual school reports. When we come to qualification and honors, we want our ACT composite average to increase to greater than 21. Currently, it's sitting at a 20. The NC State average is 18.3. However, that's probably not the most important number. The important number is what gets you into a prestigious university. Right now, looking across the entire UNC system, which would be all schools in the UNC program, they have about a 20 to 25 average ACT score for that 25-75% that they report. And what that means is that 25% of the freshman class has this and 75% has that. However, 33 is the highest average. Of course, it's at UNC Chapel Hill and NC State, not far behind with a 31. So we want to get into those high 20s and 30s, but we're sitting at an average of 20 right now, so we need to make sure that we're making improvements. And so we said greater than 21 because we want to get closer to a 22 or a 23 in 1 year's time, but we also got to start somewhere. We have a goal of having 70% of our participating students to earn a 3 or above on AP exams. While I can tell you that there are some benefits for a student who might not score well on the exam to participate in the course, because then that makes them very successful when they go to college, because they've actually had a pretty tough time with me before they get on to college, and when they take that class in college, they're really well prepared for it. The true goal of taking an AP class is to do well on the AP exam and be able to get those college credits. The UNC system will accept a 3 or above, and so that's our major market. We want to make sure that we increase our current rate of a 65% pass rate to a 70% pass rate in 1 year's time. Also, we want to make sure that more and more of our students who are dual enrolling in the CCP programs or other dual enrollment programs with colleges and universities are being successful. We do have a lot of students and families who want to take advantage of these programs because, let's be honest, it's free college. In addition, it can be a more rigorous experience if you're getting a college professor teaching you a course over a traditional high school setting. However, when we send you out there and then you get a D in the class, or we send you out to that program and you get an F in that class, we're really not helping you to promote your academic goals, much less making sure that you're successful in these programs. The entire point of being involved in a dual credit program is to take on the responsibility of that higher level course with the supports you still have in a traditional senior academy or high school setting. And so we need to do better at that to make sure that our students are going to be really successful when they participate in those programs. Our current rate is not at 75%, and we feel that 75% is a good target for C or better performance for this first year with this target. We've never set these targets before. For post-secondary placement, it's been said multiple times throughout the night, we are a college prep course, or college prep school, so our students need to be not only graduating from high school, but being admitted into their schools of choice or an institution of higher education so that they can continue their career in education. Last year we did have a higher number than I had in the previous 2 years of students opting to go straight into the workforce and delay or not start college, and we need to really work with our students to make sure that they know that those are options for them and that it can actually improve their workforce, even if going into a certification program, things like that. We need to make sure that the tools that we give them, they use in a college setting so that they can give themselves better career opportunities after they graduate. So in this first year, we want to have a 95% or higher 4-year high school graduation rate and an 85% rate of graduates being accepted into institutions of higher education. So with that, we would submit that these would be our targets that we talk about all year long and we would use as part of our accountability measures. Separate from this, we would use our strategic planning process to set those ultimate targets, those visionary targets where we want to be maybe a 30 on our ACT average or a 28 on our ACT average, whatever's reasonable. We will be coming to you. Dr. Schwartzlander and I post the academic committee meeting both agreed that we need some support in data and accountability and statistics, and so we're going to be reaching out to some resources and we'll be coming to you with some proposals for that as well. Some of this is, we can pick numbers, but we really need some support from data and accountability specialists to help us make sure that the numbers are truly reflective of the goals that we're setting for ourselves. But this will be good targets for us for this year so that we can do good work and move our students forward and make sure that they're ready for what we are preparing them.
Question on the data sources. What are some of those? Are those universities and colleges of education, or is it DPI or what? You mentioned that...
For these data sets?
No, you were saying that you're going to be seeking additional data sources.
By that I meant individuals who can help us better understand how to set our targets statistically. And then the other data sources...
I didn't know if you're looking like statistical baselines.
Oh, yes, and figure out who are comparable. It's easy for us to pick a school it's easy for us to pick, let's say, Smithfield Selma Senior High School to be a comparability because it's physically across the street, but does that really represent the same population of students that we serve? And is that really a comparability? Is that really a comparable thing for us to target ourselves against or not? Talking back to the file count, are we picking a statistically reliable number of files to audit to make sure that we have a good accountability model in place? And so that's what we're talking about.
So it's a matter of just comparing apples and apples based on the census data,
right?
Whatever.
In addition, we'll be developing a rich set of data in-house over the next couple of years with our rubrics for writing because we'll have that as a standard format for assessment for students. So we're going to have a lot more writing data to be able to access. With the M-Class purchase that you authorized last month, we'll continue to have information for our K-2 population regarding their reading levels. We will be looking for a better formative assessment tool that we can use ongoing, as I mentioned, not only for EC purposes, but for general education purposes to support us in our data collection to make sure that we have good numbers to use to improve our instructional strategies. This really starts to have this, we're looking at numbers, we're looking at goals, we're looking at targets. The only point of doing any of this is to give our teachers information so that they can do a better job in the classroom of meeting the needs of their students and getting them moved forward. So it's really important that we're not picking arbitrary data sets, that we're picking data sets that really give our teachers the information that they need to improve their instructional strategies in the classroom.
So what's your feeling as far as starting to pull some of this together to serve as an aid to moving the needle on this? I mean, how soon do you try to work this through and start utilizing some of it?
Yeah, some of this we do immediately. Some of the data, because it's coming from the state, it's available to us right away. And it is relatively apples to apples because they use the same data evaluation processes for all students that take EOGs and EOCs. So that is actually, whether or not we like what they declare as proficient, it is a common sort of evaluative tool across the board as an entire state. Looking at ACT scores, that's a common evaluative tool across the nation. So that's a good, reliable data set. Whether or not we like what they consider proficient is beside the fact that if a state is performing better than we are, or a school is performing better than we are, then their students are getting a different preparation model than ours are, and we need to figure out what they're doing and see if it works here. For the AP situation and the dual and red, that's going to be a more behavioral switch. We really need to look at which students are being selected for and identified for participation in these programs, and are they prepared before they enter the program, or are they entering the program simply because they thought they were supposed to, or because they thought it was the next step in their career change. So are we as a school truly preparing our students for that rigorous coursework and that independence and autonomy that comes with those types of courses? And if we're not, then what behavioral models do we need to change? Because we're not here just to make sure that they can read, write, and do arithmetic. It's that they can do it by themselves. And that's really the part that we need to work with some of our students on. They may be very mentally capable, but the autonomy is not there, or the self-advocacy is not there. We're finding more and more that certain populations of students won't approach a professor and ask a question, but others will. So we need to work with those populations of students and say, hey, this is your right, you need to do this as well, to advocate for yourself and be able to ask the questions that you need. So it'll be a both and. Instructional strategies, behavioral strategies, and what do we need to stop doing because it's not advancing.
So at this point, what are the steps or the strategic, I want to call it a strategic plan, but it's not our strategic plan, to ensure that we meet these targets? So, I feel like we're missing a whole layer that
Right, and so that's where this is all sort of chicken and egg kind of stuff. At some point, we have to declare what it is we're trying to accomplish so that we can then build this scaffolding underneath it. So it'll be the academic committee, and the work of the academic committee and all of the subjects that were brought up are going to be those things that support holding us accountable to the target. Is simply going to be when the numbers come out, we're going to evaluate them. But when we implement PDEA, and we're implementing creative problem solving, and when we implement that and we watch and monitor, is the student's writing sample getting better? Yes or no? And if it's not, then is that the right model, or are we not doing the model correctly? Because the whole point of PDEA is that their writing and their comprehension of the subject excels so that they can actually perform better on a comprehension exam as well as in a writing situation. So if they're not, then we've got to go back and reevaluate how that's being implemented in the classroom, or whether or not it's being implemented with fidelity. So incremental formative data will give us information to go back and do those spot checks right away. Teacher walkthroughs, teacher observations, lesson plans. For certain teachers, they'll be submitting lesson plans ahead of time so that we can make sure that they're written in the right way. Then we'll go audit whether or not they perform them as it was written.
So something I can speak to that has not been done in the past in the primary is actually looking at the data and setting actual targets, even down at K2. When we assessed our kindergartners prior to them coming in for the staggered entry, we had a better idea of how to group our children. So we had true heterogeneous mixes, and we were able to kind of make sure we had a good mix so the kindergarten teachers had the ability to group properly. Whereas in the past, it was, here's your list, and we assessed on that week and shuffled a little bit, but we didn't do that. But I know, especially in 3rd or 4th grade, where we have a little bit more concrete data that's already been sent to us and I've broken down, we're going to be setting targets And then we've got the NC check-ins in 3rd grade and 4th grade that we're going to be using to assess and see how are we doing, where are we at on our target, what do we need to go back and reteach. The same will go with M-Class once we get it in place and do our BOY. What was our proficiency rate in M-Class last year? What is our target this year? And what do we see as trends? I think that's the big thing. We don't want students to be numbers. That's not what we're saying. But we have to look at the proficiency rates and see what do we need to do to grow our instruction, and how are we getting there. If the numbers aren't there, then we need to look back and reassess what we're doing. So I hope that gives a little bit more of a clear picture.
Can I share too that from the committee's perspective, I think that an easy way to answer kind of what you were asking is the targets. We have to set some targets based on, like Ms. Pulliam was saying, based on where we are today. But the list that Dr. Schwartzlander went through is sort of our overarching topics that we want to delve into more deeply from a committee perspective to see what strategies are working, what strategies aren't working, where things are going well and where things are broken, and where they're broken, then we're going to work on developing new strategies for that. So it's sort of right now it's parallel, right? Because we have to have some targets in place while we're figuring those things out, because if we don't put the targets in place, we're not going to grow at all. But I think we all feel like this, as Ms. Pulliam said, I think we all feel like this is what we can do this year, but the overarching long-term goals are going to be much loftier. Once we sort of have a better snapshot of where we are with the data, and we're taking feedback. We've gotten a lot of feedback from parents and from students and from stakeholders. So we're trying to incorporate all of that. I don't know if that helps, but okay.
So just so I'm clear, so I think what Jane said there was important for us to remember. We've talked about going back to our retreat last summer. We established, I say this for history because I find out sometimes in some discussions we lose track of what we did. So bear with me for a second. Last year at summer retreat, we talked about our academic measurement framework. We said we didn't have a robust strategy that we thought was more comprehensive. So what we as a board decided was we would use the school report card. We came back in December. That was way too late, in my personal opinion, but we got it done. We set a target. We'll reevaluate it, next year. So this recommendation is coming forward I see this almost, and we talked about this, if you remember, we wanted a Rev 2 and a Rev 3 of how we assess success with accountability for measurement for our system, which this is. So is this being proposed as the one that we are voting on tonight for 1920, at which point, I just want to remind everybody, we said last year that we had a school-wide bonus structure based on those targets being made. I just want us to all be on the same page that first, are we approving this or not for this year? And second, if we do, is this the basis for which we will use to drive a bonus target, at an institutional level? We never got to individuals. We just said at an institutional level. I just want to be clear on those 2 points for everybody. So what is the recommendation? Is it for both of those? Or?
This was specifically prepared in response to what's the proposal for the year for sort of evaluating my performance, evaluating my team's performance, and making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to a broader spectrum of success than a simple report card grade.
So the answer to the first one is yes.
The answer to the first one is the school-wide bonus. It hasn't been discussed at length.
Okay. That's actually probably a good question is,
because that's really
where would that be discussed, right? I mean, should we discuss that here now, or like I said, the cadence of things we got to keep getting better on as a board. Like that really should have been done in our summer retreat, so that we were locked and loaded when school started. Okay, so we are where we are now. I just think we as a board need to say for this year. I don't want us to wait to December like we did last year, because I don't think that's fair to our leader and our administration, our staff, and even our stakeholders. We need to get this done earlier. I'm fine with not making a decision tonight, but that's a topic we need to, at a minimum, I would say we need to get done next month. We need to have And it's a little unclear to me of who would make that proposal. I would kind of go back, I guess, to Susan to bring that forth as a proposal from her representative staff, maybe at the next board meeting.
And run that through academic committee as well.
Okay, all right.
Right, with good discussion from academic committee.
Okay.
I think, and for the September.
Yes.
agenda.
No, I'm good. So that's an action for
So
September.
I'm not quite clear what we.
So what we're saying is we'll vote tonight if this is being proposed, vote for this particular topic. For September, the action item is that the Academic Affairs Committee will come back with a second round recommendation on if from a performance perspective, there will be a compensation component of that. Basically, if we approve this tonight, then they can go back and talk about it. Do they come back and say, if we get to 85% of some aggregate target, do we pay out a bonus or not? I mean, that's a proposal that has to be brought to us, because when I look at it, I would ask the question is, well, if I make 2 of those, but I don't make the other 8, do we meet it or not? So you can have a weighted formula, you can do all kinds of, so somebody needs to come to us with a proposal, and so what I'm hearing is that would be academic affairs for next month. I do want to push us that we get that done, and we don't kick the can further into the school year.
Because this should be the hardest part. I mean, this has been said as the goal. It's a matter of now.
I don't know if I'd say hardest when you talk about paying people.
But then the other part is how you want to divide that up and how you want to weight that and do that in a way that's challenging.
Because last year we set a target, we set a stretch goal, right? But
Yeah.
just for everybody, especially the new board members that were not part of those discussions, what we said was we set the targets. In the events the targets were met, we would then decide a payout strategy. We didn't make a decision on the financial payout because it was based on budget availability, did we meet the goals, et cetera. So we never got to the point where we made a financial decision of how much, just so you know. So what the plan next month should be, it should be more comprehensive. It says, if we meet them as defined by these things, 2 out of 3, 80% off and whatever, we should be able to say, you know what, based on our budget projections, we're going to allocate X amount of dollars aside for that full budget. Okay.
When you start dividing the money, that's when the fun happens.
I must have misunderstood because I understand that, if the academic committee wants to, evaluate whether or not a bonus would be coupled with the achievement of these targets or not, but I was hoping we could get more from the academic committee than just that next month, as far as how to reach these goals. Yeah, I mean, is that realistic or? Yeah. Okay.
What we can show you, what we certainly can talk about is what we're doing within each area and where we still know we have identified resource gaps that we need to circle the wagons around.
Yeah, again, this probably is the most important conversation we have as a board, is that we need to understand where we're putting our resources. And resources is 2 things. It's people, it's time, and it's hard dollars. So when we talk about the trade-offs we need to make for next year to reach these goals, we got to understand where we putting our money. We just heard a proposal earlier, right, to use some EC funds specifically to hire, additional, staff augmentation, right? The Title I funds. But we have more money accessible to us than just Title I funds. Those are the hard pivots and investments where my dad always said, you put your money where your mouth is. And that's people and time. So we need to assess ourselves is, when you come back with those recommendations, are there trade-offs in budgets we need to make to enable a plan?
So taking that a bit further in thought, if you are looking at setting up dollar amounts or setting up a performance pay system, and that at the same time there's a dollar value to get you there, that's what you're saying, that's true. How do you, that's all got to be balanced out in the budget. So when does finance come back into that, or are those numbers already set up?
I'll be glad to do it when the proposal is brought before me on the investment dollars. That's,
I would also argue that we need to wait till we have allotments and we know what kind of.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, we probably can't get to that level of detail, but within the next 2 months at a minimum, we know, give or take, in the allotments where they're going to kind of land. I'm saying some of these other things that we talk about we want to do, there needs to be dollar figures on. I mean, like that college advisor, as an example, right? Do we need to hire an extra specific college advisor and it's gonna cost us $30,000? Do we need to put something up, you know what I'm saying? We need to put dollar figures to those things so that we can then factor them into the budget. We recognize.
Can I just clarify for the Academic Affairs Committee, though, what you want from us next time is if we need a certain percentage or whatever calculation we decide of these targets, then we would recommend paying out the bonus. But it's not our responsibility to determine what that bonus should be.
That's correct.
Okay, just making sure.
That part's correct.
Okay.
But there's the second dimension to that is, this is where we've struggled as an institution. There's things we want to do. There's methods that you can, strategies to go do them, we do it, which is A, B, C, D. And then what is the cost to go do those, the cost to change them, whatever. It's that cost factor that has to come in sooner than later because we set these budgets now. So that's the only point.
And I would hope that through the dialogue in the Academic Affairs Committee, that part of what, in my view, our goal is to not only discuss these things, but to prioritize.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? And so in the prioritization, then I think we can bring recommendations to the board and then have the board, see if they agree with the prioritization and then talk about the money, right?
Absolutely.
Because we probably can't afford to do everything that we would love to do, right? So, okay, just make sure.
So you've got a sense of, there's a sense of urgency to do something, and on this. And I think that one of the things you have to be careful is to make sure that you're analyzing all it's going to take.
Yes.
You don't want to be in a position where you're thinking more about where you're getting to as far as the reward versus what it takes for everybody to earn that. So I'll step back and say, I feel a little clearer on that, and that may be where there needs to be more of as much as I'd like to see something next month.
Right.
I don't know how much time you and the committee have between next month and the members. So I would just say give it your best effort on that. Would you?
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine, because the reason we've got to start thinking holistically for this system, because you're going to hear a proposal from the facilities board, right, to invest a significant amount of dollars, right, in a capital strategy, which, by the way, I fully support, but we've got to make trade-offs, and you can't do these things in serial, otherwise you never engage. So I just want to call it out as we think holistically.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the source of my questions, because I agree with Jane. The bonus structure is important, but what's most important is the steps and how to get there. And the bonus is irrelevant if we're not going, if we don't have a plan.
Or if they feel helpless to get to it, because there's no wheels on the car. So,
I promise you don't invest to get to the goal. Getting to the goal and having money to pay it is no good to us, right?
Yeah, the worst thing we can do is tell our teachers, be better. The most important thing we can do is, here's some things we can do to help support you in making improvements towards our goals.
I think we're on the right track. Yep. Any other questions? We got a vote? All right. Do I hear a motion on these numbers? The numbers, agreeing to these numbers.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019-20 recommendation academic targets as presented.
Second.
So a motion, Mr. Dunn, a second, Ms. Jackson. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Opposed? So that passes, that item. So, next item is finance.
Before we move off of academic,
Okay.
I wanted to ask a couple questions and just make a couple comments. In looking at the math EOG scores, I know that they have not come out yet from the school itself. While the individual students have received those scores, when you look at the individual students and it has the school score of showing not proficient, are we expecting anything different from that when we get our school results?
I'm speaking out of turn because I had yet to see our first school level report. It shouldn't be. I would imagine that they're not releasing those reports with inaccurate data to the individual students. What we won't see is how high those numbers are, how they compare to the state, if this is part of the renorming, if this is a malfunction of our own. That's what's hard for me to be able to tell you right now. But I wouldn't think that they would be marginally different or majorly different from what you see.
I guess I want to understand is that either way you look at it, if I'm looking at my child's report and it shows that our school is not proficient in math, are we going to see something else that says that we are proficient?
You might across the different grade levels because the only thing you're seeing is data about one grade level. You're not seeing any data about third grade or fifth grade or eighth grade or math 1. So yes, as a school, we're going to get a more comprehensive set of data that tells us how the whole school is doing.
But even for a specific grade, let's say this is just for, say, from 4th grade. That is what our...
I don't know.
Okay, well, I guess as a board member or as a parent, when I get my child and I see that, I say that our school, at least in the 4th grade from last year, was not proficient in math. So,
and it is a possibility.
Okay, well, no, that's what it says.
Yeah.
That is what it says.
Right.
We cannot avoid that.
No.
I know the numbers are not out till next week.
Right.
But I want to make sure that we are all aware and that this is important.
Yeah.
This impacts the school on a broad
Absolutely.
level. And when I look at this, 4th grade, these students, we failed these students last year. There's no getting around it. I don't know what the solution is. I think
and that's part of why we need to see the data sets because it actually breaks it down by skill level. So we can actually, from an instructional perspective, figure out which units, which instructional skills, which competencies were the areas that were the weakest. What it doesn't tell us at all is what did or didn't, which elements of the math instruction worked well and which ones didn't. It tells us that as a whole it didn't function well.
Right.
But it doesn't tell us what we need to do to make the classroom better. We need more
I think it needs
deep
to be
information to be able to make the classroom better.
And
Because right now all I can do is say, go do better.
And
which does nothing for anyone.
well, I think we need to start looking at, is there some historical data? Is there one grade that specifically over the years is trending? Do we need to switch teachers out? Are they in their specific skill level? We need to really look hard at that.
Absolutely. That's what Ms.
Because
Dora's been doing ever since she got here.
We have been working towards all of these goals for years. And this is a significant regression. And I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying.
I'm not trying to undervalue the significance of this. What I'm trying to say is I don't have enough information to intelligently speak to it. Certainly, the number in and of itself is concerning and more than a red flag, but I can't intelligently tell you what I can do to fix it until I get more information.
But we should have that hopefully by the...
Yeah, we're really projecting that by the end of this week, we will have the data that we need in our hands so that we can then start doing some deep dives and having some intelligent conversations with our staff about how to make improvements immediately, and as well as talking to the larger group about specific strategies that are larger.
We need to look at this data as well as historical data. I mean,
absolutely.
Are we seeing specific...
Well, and this is what's difficult, where historical data may or may not be useful for us because it's a completely different assessment.
And we have data.
That's where, so we've got
Well, you have a trend. I mean, whether it's a renorming year or not, if a certain grade is not proficient. If average is not proficient for that grade.
If leading into the 4th grade, they weren't proficient or something like that.
And I understand the renorming and how that's different, how they weight different concepts differently, and so, and anticipating there would be a lower score, but it's significantly lower. And, we just need to focus on that. And then the other question that I had relates to kind of some things that I've observed, but also comments in hearing as far as, is it accurate that the 5th grade is the only one that has been switched up in their groupings this year?
No.
I just want to make sure I understand. Okay, can you explain to how that is done, if it's different from the rest of the 5th through 8th grade, or what is done in the intermediate academy as far as grouping students?
Absolutely. So, referring to the handouts that the Hopkins family has given, their parts of our parent and student handbook, the Accelerated Plus group, it states that All students are going to be grouped according to capacity, performance level, aptitude, and teachers' professional recommendations, and all groups will be fluid and flexible and may change throughout the year to facilitate better teaching and learning. All of our intermediate teachers take historical data into account. They also do beginning of the year assessments that are aligned with the previous grade levels, end of grade information. They take historical grades and teacher observations. They take learning styles, and then they make sure that students are grouped appropriately. So if you are an Accelerated Plus student, then you're an Accelerated Plus course.
Okay, so, and let's just say, and I'm assuming in 3rd and 4th grade, from what I can remember, that those students that are identified as Accelerated Plus or whatever grouping they may be in, then those students would be in those accelerated classes. And so, or if they were not, then they would be in different classes. And for 5th grade this year, are the Accelerated Plus students split up and mixed heterogeneously so that they're not all together, or?
Every student is an Accelerated Plus in every subject. So therefore, if you are proficient and Accelerated Plus in math and you struggle in language arts, you are not going to be in an Accelerated Plus language arts class, because that is not an appropriate placement for you to meet you where you are.
Do we have more than one Accelerated Plus group? Do we have enough students that we've actually gotten to the point where we actually have 2 sections of
In 5th grade we do.
And so that would create some recombining? Because the goal would, I think there's this traditional mindset that there would be one Accelerated Plus group and then all the rest would fall into some other category. And at some point when our students are advancing academically, we should have more and more Accelerated Plus groups of students if they're getting to that higher achievement level. So it sounds like we might have crossed over that crescendo with this particular group. And so now there's actually 2 sections of it, so they're intermingling in a little bit different way.
Math drives everything beginning in 5th grade. So we have a compacted math class. They teach the 5th and 6th grade content. Then in 6th grade, they do 6th and 7th. In 7th, they do 7th and 8th. And then in 8th, they do Math 1. So those students are going to be grouped together. If they're in a compacted math class, they are high achieving math students. That does not mean that all students in a high achieving math class are also high achieving language arts students. If they are, then they're in those same classes. If they're not, it's not appropriate for us to group that child in a leveled class where they're not going to be able to be successful.
So we have 2 accelerated classes in the 5th grade?
Yeah.
In math?
In the grade level, yes. Yes.
The same grade that was not proficient? That's okay.
Well,
2 accelerated classes in our 4th grade last year, 5th grade this year, and we were not proficient.
Or, I mean, we have to take the data we have. So the number of 5 students who scored a level 5 are probably not as many as we want them to have, as many as we want them to be. So we need to determine what criteria we can follow, and the teams have done that, in order to push and challenge those kids to rise to the occasion.
Is there different criteria for selecting the 2 Accelerated Plus groups, or is it the same criteria, and are there equal number of Accelerated Plus students in each of those classes, or are they mixed? Are there Accelerated Plus students in with other Accelerated students, or are the Accelerated Plus students all together?
It depends on which class you're in.
Well,
like if you're in math, you're in an Accelerated Plus class.
It's difficult for me to understand, but it's also difficult for other parents to understand as well, because those same kids track. So if
sometimes
they're
in elementary school they do, but not in middle and high school they don't.
So they're not tracking the same classes with the same students this year?
If a student is identified as Accelerated Plus in math and Accelerated Plus in language arts, then they will be in those classes together. I might be an Accelerated Plus language arts student and score out of the ballpark on my language arts and struggle in math. I shouldn't be in that math class.
And I understand that, but I guess it's not been explained real well, I guess, to the parents, and then in observation and seeing how students are tracking together.
Ms. Jackson?
Yeah, so two things. One, I think to sort of clarify what you're asking is, in any student who is in Accelerated Plus in a particular subject is in a classroom with only other students who are Accelerated Plus in that subject. That's what you're asking, right?
Yes, exactly right.
So in other words, if there are 25 students in Accelerated Plus Math in 5th grade and 22 students in Accelerated Plus in English or Language Arts in 5th grade, are all 25 math students and all 22 Language Arts students Accelerated Plus, I think is what they're asking.
In that one class.
In that particular class. Or are they in?
So if we look at the criteria of what accelerated plus means,
Okay.
I
Well,
mean,
what is the criteria?
Well, there is
What-
the criteria.
That's my
It's in the
second
handbook.
question.
It's in
right,
the
it's
handbook.
85th to 100th percentile. So an 85 is a mid-level 4.
So the answer to the question is yes. You're staying within the 85 to 100.
Correct.
What that is in the, I wasn't asking if you were going outside of that. I'm just asking if based on what the criteria that we are following as a school, then all 25 of those hypothetical math students would all fall within that criteria, and that's how they're determined to be put in that Accelerated Plus class. It is not something that a student with an 80 that shows promise is put in that class.
I can speak with confidence that it is. I can't speak with certainty that it is.
Who can speak with certainty that it is?
If you give me a few minutes, I can speak with certainty that it is.
You don't have to right this second.
Well, I mean,
at some point.
But like being asked the question, I'm going to give you an answer, but I can't give that answer to you just like right now.
No. I wasn't trying to say that you needed to be able to say it right this second. I'm saying if you're not the person to speak with certainty, we need to know who is.
I am the person to speak with certainty, but not this
Board
moment.
member, I'll not for the board members to finish their question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Worley.
So I just want to make sure that we as a board and that parents and stakeholders understand, A, what the criteria are to be in these different groupings, B, that we are following those criteria in each grade level, and C, that we as a board who are held accountable for these things feel confident that that's what's happening. And I recognize that we did not give you advance notice that we were going to be asking this question, but if by the next board meeting we could have that answer, that would be great, just to make sure, so that we can say with confidence to the stakeholders of the school that we are following what it says that we'll do.
I'll be happy to email the board tomorrow with that answer.
Thank you.
Ms. Denny, do you have any follow-up? Try to get a question in a little. Watch out.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure for clarity and for the minute, so that action item, because I'm making a list of action items we're agreeing to this time from an accountability for the board perspective, helping Nicole a little bit, because I know it's hard to keep all those minutes too, is, so what we're asking for is we want the data to back the story for all intermediate grades, or is this all grades? To back that, we are actually administering it by the policy as written with two groups.
I think it applies 3 through 8. That's what the policy applies 3
3 through 8? Okay. So it's 3 through 8 data report to back the grouping strategy is in the policy?
And I guess the other thing, if the policy is not being followed, or if there is a significant, this word's been tossed around a lot, but significant heterogeneous mix where they're outside of this, I would like to know why and for what goal or what purpose or what benefit there is to doing it that way.
I'm not sure if I'm hearing you correctly. I haven't. Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to speak to one of your previous points that you asked about trends, because this trend falls in my last grade.
I can't speak to what specific deficiencies we're going to see until we get the score reports, but I can tell you one of the trends that we're going to slowly start to continue to work on is tracking our students from kindergarten on. Significantly, one of the biggest significant things I've seen is because of the Read to Achieve law, not just here, we have students that transfer in, all that is focused on is reading. And yes, reading is important because they need to be able to read, to comprehend, to think. However, when you let math skills go to the wayside, then you form huge number sense and number ability gaps, which then compact and become huge cracks. So I think the fact that last year we started to benchmark progress from kindergarten up through fourth, and then this year we're going to be continuing aligning kindergarten through second with the mid-year and summative DPI assessments. That is going to help us keep ourselves better on track and see where are we supposed to be at the end of the year. We used SchoolNet last year. I'm torn with SchoolNet, but I think the fact that we're going to be tracking with the standards that the children need to know by the end of grade level more efficiently in kindergarten through second, we're going to see less of an effect on our third and fourth grade. We also looped 2 of our strongest math teachers with our third and our fourth graders to kind of help bring solid math instruction for 2 years. Although we're flexible but self-contained a little bit differently in third grade, that teacher is taking on the lead role in supporting her team with solid math activities and instruction.
I know I'll have more questions when we get more data, but.
Yeah, and we should. So, anything further on that? Well, I'll just kind of end this. You've got a good team, and I think that you are in the process of parsing this data and figuring out exactly how it can relate to this operation. And you're given that space to an extent to do so, is what it comes down to. It's got to be right. Garbage in, garbage out, all that stuff we always talk about.
And if there's something that support from the board, or if there's something that you recognize that we as a school need that we don't have, we need to take immediate action to make that happen.
And we never want anything half-baked or incorrect as an answer. I would much rather have say, let me check on that. So, accuracy. So, all right, I forgot where we're at. So, finance. Yeah, we went back into a loop on that. Finance, Mr. Treasurer.
So a couple of things from Finance Committee for this month. As standard, we always approve the budget, as you can see. I don't know which page it is, but you can look at the July 1st to July 31st budget. We all have to remember that, as Susan said, this is the stuff in the state for the budget has not been approved, so some of these dollar figures may have to change once that's actually approved. But as it is right now, the preliminary budget is in front of us. Remember, we always have to show that it's as close to zero-based budget as we can get to. So this budget showing a current projection of us ending the year with a surplus of around $1,300. We know that there's cushions built within the budget in various areas as we give and take throughout the year. We've agreed that from a fiscal policy perspective, what we want to do is we want to have a mid-year checkpoint where we review collectively as a board where these budgets are at, where are we running over, where are we running under, to make some of those pivots. So we just need to approve this, but recognizing the real numbers, more locked and loaded and precise, will come once the budgets are set. Because if they come in there and say ADM is $100 higher, that's tens of thousands of dollars in a master $8 million budget. So we shouldn't be surprised at those numbers when those get set, that it moves. We feel comfortable it will only go up from a surplus perspective, but I just want everybody to be aware of that. So I just take a motion to approve the budget as presented for this month.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Taylor, second from Mr. Woodard. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes, likewise. Ayes have it.
So there's a couple of items, other additional items. If you look in your in your minutes, there's a proposed fiscal policy change. This is in regards to some great collaboration between the school and the Booster Club as far as administrative type tasks on a volunteer organization. There was basically a collective collaboration that they wanted the school would take over the responsibility of actually collecting the gate fees. So that there's policies, fiscal controls, all that stuff. They decided to do that between them. And so to enable that, the way that they do it with multiple teams going on multiple days, et cetera, our petty cash policy said that it would be capped at $200, but that's not enough to actually start, multiple games. So the proposed change in that policy, you can see the wording would be changed to the petty cash fund would be capped at $2,000 with no more than $500 in a single cash box. At any given time. So that's a procedural change that we would be recommending so that the school could handle the gates across multiple sports on a given day. So we just need to take a motion.
Just a real quick question. Who is in charge of, who's responsible for the petty cash? The business office, okay. All right.
Motion to approve the proposed fiscal policy change.
I have a motion from Ms. Booker and a second from Mr. Jackson. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, likewise.
One other item. Oh, yeah, you can sign.
No, it's you.
Well, you can sign. You can sign. One other thing is every year we do the bank signature card for those on the board. Every time a check is written from the school, there has to be 2 signatures on the card, so we work really hard to be timely so that people get paid. So given some people stepped off, the board needs to approve who will be on that signature card. The recommendation is for myself as treasurer, Robbie and Benji as finance and facilities, and Paul is on the resource development committee, that we would approve those 4 for authorized signatures. We have to have this from the committee so that then it can be taken to the bank. The bank actually officially has to change the signature cards. So we just recommend that be approved so that we have the meeting minutes to go get it changed at the bank.
Item in front of you, have an action motion? This requires a motion.
I make a motion to approve the bank signature card changes as presented. Second.
Motion from Ms. Booker, second from Ms. Denning. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, likewise. Anything else?
One last one. We were busy this month. We got a lot done. Here's the big one. Everybody sit down. We're ready for this one. Okay, so if you look on the back page of the committee meeting notes, what you'll see is a financial snapshot for FY20. The operating account, and correct me if I'm wrong, this operating account balance did not include any funds from fiscal year drawdowns, correct?
They were,
I want to make sure I state that accurately. So,
If that was posted for July, then yes, some drawdowns were passed in and out, but as a reminder, they go in and right back out. So the balance would be the settled balance after the monies have been expended.
I guess what I'm getting at is, give or take 1% or 2%, would this be accurate as of June 30 for the operating account balance? I mean, roughly,